What does it mean to stand where light falters to face a darkness that knows your name? In the deep places of the world where stone weeps and silence hums, there are truths older than the stars, questions carved in the roots of mountains before the sun was kindled, long before Sauron's shadow stretched across Middle-earth, before the ring's fire was forged in the heart of Mount Doom. There were forces stirring in the depths, ancient, untamed, neither good nor evil, but vast and unyielding. The Balrog of Moria was one such force, a flame of Udun, a relic of a time when the world was chaos and fire. Yet in its terror, in its unrelenting might, there lies a paradox. Can despair in its deepest form kindle the spark of hope? There is a song that hums in the heart of those who walk through shadow, not the radiant anthem of Ilúvatar's creation, but a quieter strain, a melody of steps taken in defiance of fear. Gandalf the Grey heard this song as he led the fellowship through the mines of Moria, his staff a faint beacon against the weight of stone. He was no stranger to darkness, this wanderer of Middle-earth, this bearer of Narya the Ring of Fire. Yet in Moria the darkness was different, older, heavier, alive with whispers that spoke of things even he could not name. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world, he said, and his voice carried the weariness of one who had seen too much, who knew the cost of light in a place that hungered for it. The road through Moria was no mere path, but a descent into the soul's crucible where every step tested the heart's resolve. Frodo felt at the ring, a cold weight at his chest, its voice, a ceaseless murmur of power and ruin. He was small, a hobbit of the Shire, yet he bore a burden that could break kings. Sam walked beside him, his loyalty a quiet flame, his eyes fixed on Frodo as if to anchor him against the dark. Aragorn and Legolas moved with the grace of those born to battle, yet even they felt the weight of Moria's silence. Boromir's heart was heavy with doubt, Gimli's with grief for the lost glory of his kin. Merry and Pippin, young and untested, clung to courage they did not yet understand. And Gandalf, their guide, bore the greatest burden of all, the knowledge that he might lead them to their doom. Fear is not a foe to be slain, but a mirror reflecting the shape of our frailty. In Moria, the Fellowship faced this mirror, their footsteps echoing in halls where dwarven songs had long since faded. The air was thick with memory. Balin's tomb, the clatter of orcish drums, the faint gleam of mithril in the dark. Gandalf read the records of the dwarves, his voice steady, but his heart troubled. He knew the Balrog waited not as a servant of Sauron, but as a force of its own, a remnant of Morgoth's ancient wrath. To face it was to face not only death, but the despair of standing against something older than hope, something that burned with a fire no mortal could quench. Gandalf's despair was not born of weakness, but of wisdom. He was a Maya, a spirit of fire and light, yet he walked in the guise of an old man, his power veiled, his heart bound to the fate of Middle-earth. In Moria he saw the limits of his strength, the fragility of the Fellowship, the vastness of the darkness they opposed. The Balrog was his mirror, a creature of flame like himself, but unbound, untamed, a shadow of what he might have been had he chosen power over service. When the moment came when the Balrog rose from the depths, its whip of fire cracking the air, Gandalf did not hesitate. "You cannot pass," he said, and his voice was a thunder, a defiance, a prayer. The bridge of Khazad-dûm trembled, the Fellowship fled, and Gandalf stood alone, his staff blazing against the dark. The battle was no mere clash of strength, but a reckoning with the soul's deepest truths. Flame met flame, light met shadow, and in their meeting the bridge shattered. Gandalf fell, his body plummeting into the abyss, his light snuffed out. The Fellowship wept, their hearts broken by the loss of their guide, their hope buried in the ruins of Moria. Yet despair is not the end of the tale. In the depths where even the nameless things could not follow, Gandalf fought on. The Balrog was his crucible, his trial by fire, and in its flames he was unmade and remade. He fell as the gray and rose as the white, not because he was unbroken, but because he had faced despair and found in its heart an unlikely hope. This hope was not a promise of victory, but a flicker of possibility, a whisper that even the darkest fire could forge something new. Gandalf's fall was a passage, a descent into the abyss, where the world's oldest shadows dwelt. The Balrog, a creature of destruction, became the unwitting catalyst for his transformation. In its flames, Gandalf saw not only his own frailty, but the strength that lies beyond it, the the strength to endure, to rise, to carry the light though it burns. His return as the White was no triumph, but a continuation, a testament to the truth that hope is born not in the absence of despair, but in its very heart. The Balrog's fire was not merely a force of ruin, but a mirror of Gandalf's own nature. He was Olorin, a spirit of fire. Yet he had chosen the path of service, of guidance, of sacrifice. The Balrog was fire unbound, a shadow of what Gandalf might have become had he sought dominion. In their clash, Gandalf faced not only the creature, but himself, the temptation to wield his power to cast aside his mortal guise and become a force of destruction, yet he chose to stand, to protect, to fall. His choice was a refusal of power, a surrender to the greater song that hummed through Middle-earth. The song of those who walk through the road is long and the end uncertain. The Fellowship, scattered and grieving, carried the weight of Gandalf's loss. Frodo the Ring-bearer felt the ring's pull grow stronger, its whispers louder in the absence of the Grey Pilgrim's guidance. He was a hobbit, small and unassuming, yet the ring had chosen him, or perhaps he had chosen it in the moment he stepped from Bag End into the unknown. The ring was no mere object but a living thing, a fragment of Sauron's will, its gold a promise of power, of safety, of all that might be gained if only he would claim it. Yet, Frodo walked his steps heavy, his heart torn between duty and despair. The ring was his burden, but it was also his mirror, showing him the fragility of his own soul, the temptation to turn back, to hide, to let another bear the weight. Frodo's journey was one of sacrifice, a descent into the heart of darkness that left him forever changed. Each step took him further from the Shire, from the hobbit he had been, from the light he had known. The ring was a chain, its weight growing with every mile, its voice a constant whisper in his ear. In Moria he felt its power most keenly, surrounded by shadows that seemed to feed on its malice. The loss of Gandalf was a blow that shook him to his core, a reminder that even the wisest could fall, that even the strongest could be broken. Yet Frodo walked on, driven by a purpose he could not fully name, a hope that flickered like a candle in the wind. His courage was not in his strength, but in his smallness, in his willingness to bear what others could not. Samwise, Gamgee ever faithful, walked beside Frodo, his heart a quiet fortress against the darkness. He was no hero, no wizard, no king, only a gardener, a hobbit who loved the feel of earth beneath his fingers. Yet Sam's love for Frodo was a light that no shadow could extinguish. "I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo," he said, "but I can carry you." In those words lies a truth older than the mountains. Love is not the absence of burden, but the strength to bear it together. Sam's heart broke. 1,000 times broke, for the Shire he might never see, for Frodo's fading light, for the innocence they had both lost. Yet he walked not for glory, but for the promise of a dawn he could not yet see. Sam's journey was one of quiet fidelity, a song sung in the small moments, sharing a morsel of lembas, speaking of the Shire's green fields, holding Frodo's hand when the ring's weight grew too great. He was the anchor, the one who remembered what they fought for when Frodo could not. In the ashen wastes of Mordor, where the sky was a bruise and the air tasted of sulfur, Sam looked up and saw a single star. It was a fleeting glimpse, a pinprick of light, yet it was enough. That star was his faith, his refusal to let the darkness have the final word. Sam's hope was not grand, but humble, rooted in the earth he loved, in the promise of a tomorrow he could not yet see. Sam's loyalty was not blind, but rooted in a deep understanding of Frodo's burden. He saw the toll the ring took, the way it dimmed Frodo's eyes, the way it bent his shoulders. Sam could not take the ring, could not bear its weight, but he could bear. Frodo could carry him when his strength failed. In the shadow of Mount Doom, when Frodo could go no further, Sam lifted him, his arms steady, his heart unwavering. This was his gift, his sacrifice, his song, a song of love that echoed through the desolation, a melody that no fire could burn away. Aragorn, the heir of Isildur, carried his own burden, one of blood and destiny. He was Strider, a ranger of the wilds, yet beneath his tattered cloak lay the weight of a broken sword, a shattered legacy. What is a king without a throne? What is a man whose birthright is a promise unfulfilled? In the silence of the wild, Aragorn wrestled with fear, not of death but of failure. To falter was to doom not only himself but all who looked to the line of Elendil for hope. Yet he walked his steps steady, his gaze fixed on a horizon he might never reach. In Moria he led the Fellowship after Gandalf's fall, his heart heavy with the loss of the one who had guided him since youth. Aragorn's strength was not in his sword, but in his choice to continue to bear the mantle of leadership, though it weighed like stone. Aragorn's journey was one of duty, a long road from the wilds to the throne. As Strider, he was a wanderer, his name a mask for the king he might become. Yet even as king he remained a man, his heart heavy with the weight of those he could not save. His coronation was not a triumph but a beginning, a promise to heal, a land scarred by war. Arwen's choice to stay was his anchor, her love, the light that guided him through the shadow. Their legacy was not in stone or crown, but in the hope they kindled in the kingdom they built for those who would come after. Arwen's sacrifice was a quiet fire, a choice that burned away her immortality for a fleeting life with Aragorn. She was the even star, a daughter of the elves, yet she chose the path of mortality, her heart bound to the man who would be king. Her love was a star that shone in the twilight of Middle-earth, a light that endured, though it would fade. In Rivendell she stood by the shards of Narsil, her eyes tracing the broken blade that would be reforged. Her choice was not one of glory, but of loss, a surrender to the truth that love is not the absence of pain, but the courage to embrace it. Arwen's legacy was in the son she bore in the kingdom. She helped build in the love that outlasted her years. Legolas, the elf of Mirkwood, brought a different light to the fellowship. His eyes, keen and ancient, saw beyond the shadows of Moria to the stars that shone before the world was made. Yet even he, with his grace and ageless wisdom, felt the weight of mortality in the mines. The silence of Moria was a contrast to the songs of his people, the melodies of starlight and forest. Legolas's hope was in the eternal, in the beauty that endures beyond the fading of the world. Yet his friendship with Gimli, a dwarf of stone and fire, was a new song, a harmony born of difference, a testament to the truth that hope can bridge even the deepest divides. Legolas's journey was one of balance, a dance between the eternal and the fleeting. In Moria he moved with the grace of his kind, his bow a whisper of death to the orcs that pursued them. Yet his heart was not untouched by the loss of Gandalf, the guide who had bound them together. Legolas's faith was in the stars and the light that shone before the world began. Yet he learned to see the beauty of the earth through Gimli's eyes, to find hope in the stone and fire of the dwarves. His friendship with Gimli was a spark in the dark, a reminder that even in the deepest places new light can be kindled. Gimli, son of Gloin, carried the grief of his people into Moria. The halls of Khazad-dûm were his heritage, yet they were a tomb, a reminder of the glory lost to greed and shadow. His axe was ready, his heart fierce, yet in Balin's tomb he wept, his voice a lament for the kin he would never know. Gimli's journey was one of pride and redemption, a quest to honor the past while forging a future. His bond with Legolas, unlikely and hard-won, was a spark of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest places new light can be kindled. Gimli's faith was in the stone and the enduring strength of the earth, yet he learned to see the stars through an elf's eyes, to find hope in the fleeting beauty of the world above. Gimli's love for Moria was a fire that burned in his heart, a longing for the days when the dwarves sang in halls of stone. Yet in Moria he saw only ruin, the bones of his kin scattered among the shadows. His grief was a heavy thing, a weight that matched the ring Frodo carried. Yet Gimli's courage was in his refusal to turn back to face the darkness, though it broke his heart. His friendship with Legolas was a miracle, a bond forged in the crucible of Moria, a testament to the truth that hope can grow in the unlikeliest of places. Gimli's legacy was not in the halls he could not reclaim, but in the friendship he built in the light he carried into the world above. Merry and Pippin. The youngest of the fellowship brought a different courage to Moria. They were hobbits, lovers of laughter and simple joys, yet they stepped into the shadow with hearts unbowed. Their fear was real, their steps uncertain, yet they walked driven by loyalty to Frodo, by the call of a world larger than the Shire. In Moria they faced the terror of the orcs, the weight of Gandalf's loss, yet they did not break. Merry's quiet resolve. Pippin's reckless bravery, these were the seeds of heroes yet to bloom. Their hope was in each other, in the friendship that bound them, in the belief that even the smallest can make a difference in the dark. Merry's journey was one of growth, a passage from the carefree hobbit to the warrior who would ride with the Rohirrim. In Moria he was a shadow of that future self, a small figure in a vast darkness, yet his heart was steady, his loyalty unwavering. Pippin's journey was one of recklessness tempered by wisdom, a path that led him to the service of Gondor, to the moment when he would save Faramir's life. In Moria, he was a spark of mischief, a light that refused to be dimmed. Together they were a reminder that hope is not always grand but often small, a laughter in the dark, a hand clasped in fear. Temptation is the whisper that fills the silence, the promise of what might be. The ring spoke to all who drew near, power to Boromir, peace to Frodo, eternity to Galadriel. In Lothlorien, the Lady of the Wood faced her own mirror. The ring was offered, and in its reflection she saw a queen radiant and terrible. "All shall love me and despair," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of what could be. Galadriel was ancient, her wisdom born of ages, yet even she felt the pull of dominion. To refuse the ring was to refuse not only power but the illusion of control, the dream that one could bend the world to their will. "I shall diminish," she said, "and go into the west and remain Galadriel." Her choice was a surrender, not to weakness, but to the truth that some burdens are too great for any one soul to carry. Galadriel's refusal was a quiet act of defiance, a recognition that true strength lies not in grasping, but in letting go. She was the Lady of Light, yet her light was not her own. It was a reflection of the grace that flowed through Middle-earth, a grace she could not claim, but only steward. Her farewell to the Fellowship was a gift not of power, but of hope, the Phial of Arendil, a star's light captured in glass, a beacon for the darkest paths. In giving it to Frodo, she passed on the light. She could not keep trusting him to carry it where she could not go. Her sacrifice was not in battle, but in surrender, in choosing to fade so that others might endure. Boromir's temptation was a different fire, one that burned in his heart long before Moria. He was a man of Gondor, a warrior born to protect, yet the ring promised more power to save his city, to restore its glory, to stand as its savior. In Moria his doubt grew, his heart torn between duty to the Fellowship and the desperate need to protect his people. The ring's whisper was a siren's call, and Boromir, for all his strength, was not immune. His fall was not in Moria, but later on the slopes of Amon Hen, where he sought to take the ring from Frodo. Yet in his failure he found redemption, giving his life to protect Merry and Pippin, his sacrifice, a spark of hope in the shadow of his shame. Boromir's story is a reminder that temptation is not the end, but a crossroads, a moment where the soul chooses its path. Boromir's struggle was a mirror of the human heart torn between duty and desire. He was a man of honor, yet the ring preyed on his love for Gondor, twisting it into a need for power. His moment of weakness was a wound, yet it was also a gift, a chance to see the truth of his own frailty. In his final moments as he fought to save Merry and Pippin, Boromir found the strength he had sought in the ring, not in dominion, but in sacrifice, in the love that drove him to give everything for others. His redemption was not a victory, but a return, a step back to the man he had always been. Faith is the step taken in darkness, the hand that reaches for what cannot be seen. Éowyn knew this as she stood on the Pelennor fields, her heart a storm of grief and defiance. She was no man. Yet she faced the Witch King, her sword raised against a terror no man could slay. "I am no man," she cried, and her voice was the echo of all who have stood against despair. Éowyn's faith was not in victory, but in the act of resistance, the refusal to let darkness claim the final word. Her blow shattered the Witch King, but it also shattered her. Her body broke and her spirit adrift in the shadow of her deed. Yet in that breaking she found a new path, not as a shield maiden, but as a healer, one who mends what has been torn. Éowyn's journey was one of transformation, a passage from despair to renewal. She was a daughter of Rohan, born to ride and fight, yet her heart yearned for more than glory. In the houses of healing she met Faramir, a man who saw her not as a warrior, but as a soul wounded yet whole. Their love was a quiet flame, a light kindled in the shadow of war. Éowyn's faith was not in the sword, but in the life she chose after it, in the gardens she would tend, in the peace she would build. Her story is a reminder that faith is not the absence of doubt, but the courage to act, despite it, to plant a seed in the ruins, and trust it will grow. Faramir, too, was a man of faith, though his was a quieter kind. He was a steward of Gondor, a scholar and a warrior, yet his heart was not in conquest, but in understanding. In Ithilien he met Frodo and Sam and saw the ring's power, yet he did not take it. "I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway," he said, and his words were a refusal of temptation, a choice to honor the greater good. Faramir's faith was in the world he served, in the hope that Gondor could be more than a city of stone. His love for Éowyn was a bridge, a joining of two wounded souls who found healing in each other. Faramir's legacy was in the peace he built, in the love he shared, in the quiet strength that held Gondor together. Hope is the heaviest burden for. It asks us to believe in what we cannot know. Frodo carried this burden to the slopes of Mount Doom, his body frail, his spirit a frayed thread. The ring was no longer a temptation, but a chain dragging him toward the fire that would consume it. Gollum followed a shadow of what he once was, his heart devoured by the thing that had unmade him. In the end, it was not Frodo's strength that destroyed the ring, but his weakness, his failure to cast it into the fire, his surrender to its power. Yet Gollum, in his madness, completed what Frodo could not, falling into the flames with the ring he loved and hated. The mountain burned, and Frodo stood in its shadow, not as a hero, but as a soul who had walked to the edge of the world and returned. Frodo's journey was one of sacrifice, a descent into the heart of darkness that left him forever changed. The ring was destroyed, but its weight lingered in his soul, a wound that no victory could heal. He returned to the Shire, but it was not the home he remembered. The fields were green, the hobbits merry, yet Frodo's heart was elsewhere, adrift in the silence of what he had lost. His hope was not in triumph, but in endurance, in the small acts of courage that carried him to the end. Frodo's story is a testament to the truth that hope is not a destination, but a journey, a light carried through the dark, though it burns the hand that holds it. Gollum, too, was part of this journey, a creature of pity and tragedy. Once Smeagol, a hobbit-like soul, he was unmade by the ring, his life stretched thin by its cruel power. Yet Gollum was not merely a villain, but a mirror showing Frodo the cost of the ring's dominion. In Moria, his presence was a shadow, a reminder of the fate that awaited those who succumbed to temptation. Yet Gollum's role was not one of malice alone. In his final act, he became the unwitting instrument of the ring's destruction. His obsession leading him to the fire that Frodo could not face. Gollum's story is a reminder that even in the darkest hearts there is a spark of purpose, a thread in the greater song that cannot be undone. The ring's destruction was a moment of grace, a convergence of failure and fate. Frodo's weakness, Gollum's madness, Sam's love. These were the threads that wove the end of Sauron's power. The fire of Mount Doom was not merely a place of destruction, but a crucible, a place where the soul's choices were laid bare. The ring was unmade, but its legacy lingered, a reminder that even in victory there is loss, that even in hope there is pain. Frodo and Sam stood on the slopes of the burning mountain, their journey complete, yet their hearts heavy with the cost. The world was saved, but not for them, not entirely. Silence is the space where the soul listens, where the clamor of the world fades, and truth speaks. In the Grey Havens, Frodo found this silence. The Shire was saved, but not for him. The wounds he bore, the memory of the ring, the sting of Shelob, the ash of Mordor could not be healed in the green fields of home. He stood on the shore, his friends beside him, and looked to the west where the sea sang of a land beyond sorrow. "I have been too deeply hurt, Sam," he said, and his voice was a whisper against the tide. To leave was not to flee, but to seek to follow the song that had called him from the beginning. The ship sailed and the havens faded, but the silence remained a silence, not of absence, but of presence, of a truth that lingers when words fail. Frodo's departure was a surrender not to despair, but to grace. He was the ring-bearer, yet the ring had taken more than it gave. In the undying lands he sought not immortality but peace, a place where the wounds of his journey might find rest. His farewell to Sam, Merry, and Pippin was a moment of love, a recognition that some journeys must be walked alone, yet in their tears, in their clasped hands, there was a promise the song would continue, carried by those who remained. Frodo's silence was not an end, but a beginning, a space where the soul could listen to the melody of what lies beyond. Sam's return to the Shire was a different kind of courage, a choice to live in the world Frodo had saved. He married Rosie Cotton, raised a family, planted the seed given by Galadriel that grew into a golden tree. His life was a testament to the hope he had carried, the love that had sustained him. Yet Sam too felt the pull of the West, the call of the sea that had taken Frodo. In his old age he followed, sailing to the undying lands. His journey a completion of the song he and Frodo had sung together. Sam's legacy was in the Shire. He rebuilt in the children he raised, in the quiet strength that carried him through the shadow. Merry and Pippin too carried the song forward their lives, a continuation of the courage they found in Moria. Merry became Master of Buckland, a leader among hobbits, his heart forever marked by the battles he had fought. Pippin became Thane of the Shire, his mischief tempered by wisdom, his bravery a light for his people. Their friendship forged in the darkness of Moria endured through the years, a reminder that hope is not a solitary thing but a bond, a shared melody that echoes through time. Their legacy was in the Shire. They protected in the stories they told, in the laughter that defied the shadow. Legacy is the shadow we cast beyond our years, the echo of our choices in the years we will not see. Aragorn became king, not because he sought the crown, but because he bore the weight of his father's dreams. The sword was reforged, the kingdom restored, but the cost was written in his eyes that had seen too many farewells, too many pyres. Arwen chose mortality, her immortality traded for a fleeting life with the man she loved. Their love was a flame that burned bright but brief, a star that shone in the twilight of Middle-earth. Their son would rule, but he would not know the wilds his father walked, the doubts his mother carried. Legacy is not the name we leave, but the paths we tread for those who follow. Aragorn's journey was one of duty, a long road from the wilds to the throne. As Strider, he was a wanderer, his name a mask for the king he might become. Yet even as king he remained a man, his heart heavy with the weight of those he could not save. His coronation was not a triumph, but a beginning, a promise to heal, a land scarred by war. Arwen's choice to stay was his anchor, her love, the light that guided him through the shadow. Their legacy was not in stone or crown, but in the hope they kindled in the kingdom they built for those who would come after. Arwen's sacrifice was a quiet fire, a choice that burned away her immortality for a fleeting life with Aragorn. She was the even star, a daughter of the elves, yet she chose the path of mortality, her heart bound to the man who would be king. Her love was a star that shone in the twilight of Middle-earth, a light that endured, though it would fade. In Rivendell she stood by the shards of Narsil, her eyes tracing the broken blade that would be reforged. Her choice was not one of glory, but of loss, a surrender to the truth that love is not the absence of pain, but the courage to embrace it. Arwen's legacy was in the son she bore, in the kingdom she helped build, in the love that outlasted her years. The Balrog's fire still burns in the deep places, a reminder that despair is never far from hope. Gandalf's fall was not the end, but a passage, a trial that forged him anew. The Fellowship carried his light, though they did not know it. Their steps, a continuation of the song he sang. Legolas, with his keen eyes and steady bow, carried the grace of the elves, a reminder that beauty endures even in shadow. Gimli, with his stubborn heart and axe, bore the grief of his people, yet found friendship in the unlikeliest of places. Merry and Pippin, small yet brave, grew into their courage, their laughter a defiance of despair. Each bore their own burden, their own fear, yet together they wove a tapestry of hope, a song that echoed beyond the walls of Moria. The nameless things still stir in the depths, their hunger older than the Balrog's flame. They are the fears we cannot name, the doubts. We cannot silence the burdens we cannot cast off, yet they are not the end of the tale. The song endures, carried by those who walk, who fall, who rise again. It is sung in the laughter of hobbits, the vows of kings, the tears of those who sail west. It is the song of the small, the broken, the faithful, those who bear the light, though it blinds them who carry the burden, though it breaks them. The world of Middle-earth is a mirror reflecting the truths of our own souls. Gandalf's despair in Moria was not a failure, but a passage, a moment where the soul faced its shadow and found in its heart a spark of light. The Balrog, with its whip of flame and shadow, was not merely a foe, but a catalyst, a force that burned away the old and kindled the new. Gandalf's fall was a descent into the unknown, a journey through the deepest places of the world and the self. His return was not a resolution, but a revelation, a glimpse of the truth that hope is not the absence of darkness, but the courage to walk through it. The Fellowship's journey was a tapestry of choices, each thread woven with fear, love, and sacrifice. Frodo's burden was the ring, but his true weight was the choice to carry it, to walk, though the road promised no end. Sam's strength was not in his arms, but in his heart, in the quiet love that held Frodo. When all else failed, Aragorn's legacy was not in his crown, but in his steps in the wilds he walked, in the kingdom he built. Galadriel's wisdom was not in her power, but in her surrender, in the light she gave to others. Éowyn's courage was not in her sword, but in her healing, in the life she chose after the war. Each faced their own Moria, their own Balrog, their own moment of despair, and each found in its shadow an unlikely hope. The ring itself was a symbol of temptation, a circle of gold that promised everything and gave nothing. Its destruction was not a triumph of strength, but of weakness, of failure, of the strange grace that works through broken things. Frodo could not cast the ring into the fire yet. Gollum in his madness completed what Frodo could not. The ring's end was a reminder that the song of Middle-earth is not one of heroes alone, but of the small, the flawed, the fallen, those who stumble and yet rise, who fail and yet endure. The silence of the Grey Havens was not an end, but a beginning, a space where the soul could listen to the melody of what lies beyond. Frodo's departure was a surrender to the truth that some wounds cannot be healed in the world we know. His journey to the Undying Lands was not a reward, but a seeking, a step toward the peace that Middle-earth could not give. Yet the Shire endured its green fields, a testament to the hope he carried, the love he left behind. Sam, Merry, and Pippin carried the song forward their lives, a continuation of the melody Frodo began. The legacy of Middle-earth is not in its battles or its kings, but in its choices, in the small acts of courage that shape the world. Aragorn and Arwen built a kingdom, but their true legacy was in the love they shared, the hope they kindled for their son. Galadriel's light faded, but her gift to Frodo shone in the darkest places, a star that guided him through the shadow. Eowyn's healing was a quiet victory, a reminder that peace is as brave as war. Gandalf's fall and rise were a testament to the truth that despair is not the end, but a passage, a fire that forges the soul anew. The Balrog's flame still burns in the deep places, a reminder that darkness is never far from light, yet the song of Middle-earth endures, carried by those who walk through shadow, who face their fears, who choose hope, though it costs them everything. It is a song of the small, the broken, the faithful, those who bear the light, though it blinds them, who carry the burden, though it breaks them. It is a song that echoes in the heart of every soul who has faced despair and found in its shadow an unlikely hope. What does it mean to face the darkness? It is to stand when the ground trembles to love, when the cost is great to hope, when the dawn is far. It is to walk through Moria to hear the Balrog's flame, and to step forward, not because you are fearless, but because you are called. The world is vast, and we are small, but in our steps, the song endures. It fades now, not into silence, but into memory, a melody that lingers, waiting for the next voice to carry it forward.